Welcome. I wanted to just get this off with a few questions to the audience and kind of give a frame of reference for what we're going to be talking about this morning. And when I sort of was thinking about this panel, I was thinking about what's happened over the last 12 months. There's certainly been a great deal of discussion about how design has been affected by the new reality. I know I've been interviewed quite a few times by different magazines and publications about what I think and where design is headed. And I was thinking that perhaps this desire to reassess and soul search is a normal response to an economic crisis that has only been surpassed by the Great Depression. Ultimately, will this soul searching lead to a permanent shift in values? Will the previous excesses be replaced with some modicum of modesty and restraint? And what would this mean for the world of luxury and all its accessories? Does luxury need to be redefined, or will it be lost altogether? I have asked each of our now 4 panelists, our panelists are growing, if anyone else wants to join, please come up, in the context of these times and their own visions. They'll speak very briefly so that we can have time for discussion both with the panelists and also with the audience afterwards. So I'm going to introduce briefly, not in the order they will be talking, but the panelists. Marije Vogelzang invented her work as an eating designer after graduating from the Design Academy Eindhoven in 2000. She founded Proef in 2004, a place to eat in Rotterdam, and a design studio restaurant in Amsterdam. The basis for her work is the verb to eat, respecting the nature of food and creating experiences that touch the subject of food, starting from seed and going to shit. Vogelzang creates a bridge and is an inspiration for the culinary world as well as the design world. Besides her design work for hospitals, museums, and restaurants, she works as a consultant and gives lectures around the world. Her work is widely published in the New York Times, Icon, Wallpaper, Food and Wine, and other international magazines, and has been exhibited in galleries such as Axis in Tokyo. She recently published a book about her work and philosophy called Eat Love. Amale Andraos is co-founder with Dan Woods of Work AC, a New York-based firm that strives to develop architectural and urban planning projects that engage culture and consciousness, nature and artificiality, surrealism and pragmatism. Recent projects include the 2008 winning competition entry for MoMA PS1's Young Architects Program installation, Public Farm 1, a new branch library for Kew Gardens Hills in Queens, the new Children's Museum for the Arts, and the new headquarter building for Diane von Furstenberg. In 2008, Work AC was selected for the Architectural League's Emerging Voices, Architectural Records Winter Nights lecture series, and was nominated for the Chernikov Prize. This year, Work AC is a finalist for a National Design Award and will be included in the Hong Kong Shenzhen Biennale. Laurene Boym, down at the end, is first and foremost one half of Boym Partners, a New York-based design studio, who are the National Design Award winner in product design for 2009. Boym Partners brings a critical, experimental approach to a range of products that infuse humor and wit into the everyday. Frequently drawing from American iconography, she and her design partner, Constantine Boym, have created a variety of products and environments for an international roster of companies, including Alessi, Swatch, Floss, and Vitra. The Boyms independently create their Boym editions, sought after by many collectors around the world, and distributed by Wabnitz Editions. Boym Partners' work is included in the permanent collections of many museums, including the Museum of Modern Art and the Cooper-Hewitt National Design Museum. And our final and newcomer, Christien Meindertsma, I don't even have a bio for her, but I know her work, and I'm sure all of you do as well. She's a textile designer, textile artist. She works, some of her most recent work has been in the Fashioning Felt exhibition, was up at the Cooper-Hewitt until yesterday. And she's also included at the Cooper-Hewitt in the Design for a Living World, which is still up, so I hope you all will be able to see her work. But she does wonderful, and she'll show more of her work, but wonderful events with sheep. So I think we're going to start off first with Amale, and then Marije, and Laurene, and Christien.
I'll just show 5 projects to sort of describe what luxury is for us at Work AC. Luxury is having the possibility to think of new urban spaces and new ways to socially interact. This is our Public Farm 1 at PS1 MoMA last year, which doubled up the ground enough to create new social experience underneath a growing farm. It was entirely built of cardboard tubes and entirely recyclable. We grew 51 varieties of fruit and vegetables, and over the summer, thousands of people came to listen to music, eat, and sort of dance. Luxury is a certain new roughness. This is a store for the designer Maria Cornejo and her brand Zero. And we literally recycled sort of material from her old store, acrylic panels, sort of bent wood panels to create the dressing rooms, very simple wood floor. And the idea for the store was also inspired by the way she works. She really uses one piece of fabric and cuts it in very minimal shapes, circles, squares, etc. Luxury in New York, at least, which is different from the Netherlands, is to have public projects. There aren't enough public projects. This is a small library we're doing in Queens, a public library. And we're sort of wrapping, it looks like a new building, but we're actually wrapping an existing building with a sort of 15-foot deep band all around, creating a garden in the back and a garden on the roof. And so we'd like to have more of these public projects across the city. Luxury is school kids growing food. This is an edible schoolyard we're designing with the chef Alice Waters. Alice Waters was one of the kind of fundamental person to start the whole slow food movement in the US. And she created an edible schoolyard, the first edible schoolyard where kids cook their own food and gather after planting them, etc. in Berkeley. And we're starting up that program in the US where kids really eat packaging. I mean, and finally, luxury today is having the time to just simply fantasize about visionary projects and potential. This is for the Brooklyn Academy of Music Cultural District. We had been master planners for the BAM Cultural District for many years, and as the height of luxury expanded, all the public programs and cultural institutions that were going to happen sort of became more and more erased by developer projects and luxury condominiums, and this has all stopped now. So this is a quick rendering that we did for a magazine that suggests that we could hijack all the money for highways and shovel-ready projects to create special highway loops that would entertain culture, performance, visual arts, etc., and sort of bring back culture at the heart of this district. Thank you.
Well, the first project I want to show is a Dutch national tap water tasting. In Holland, our tap water is actually one of the purest ones in the world. We can drink from the tap, and that's pretty extraordinary. But we also use the water to flush our toilets or clean our cars or use it in the bathroom. And when you go from city to city in Holland and you taste the water from the tap, it tastes very different. And nobody's really aware of it, but everybody seems to recognize the fact. So if you would actually want to taste all the tap water from all the districts, you would have to travel yourself. But I thought it would be interesting to get all this tap water together in one place. So I had this empty water bassin where I collected 12 tap water from the 12 provinces of Holland. And I had 12 shelvings in this big circle. And in every shelf I put 160 liter of tap water, 160 empty liter bottles, and 160 liter is what we use daily as an average Dutch person of tap water. So here you can see also the name of the city where the tap water comes from. And it was a kind of contest, so you could actually taste all the tap waters and then decide which one you would like most, and then reward this city with the nicest tap water. But it was for me also a way of making people realize how special this tap water is, and I would like people to regard it as wine, because with wine, people are always very concerned about where wine comes from. So they would say, well, I need this special kind of wine because we eat steak tonight. But I would want to say, well, tonight is fish fingers night, so we have to have Rotterdam tap water. And because we eat chicken fillet, we need to have Utrecht tap water, for example. This is the way it's presented. Also, all the contents of the tap water are presented on the bottle, so you could also see the hardness of the water, and the purity would tell you something about the taste of the water. This is another project I did last year in Lebanon. I was invited by the founder of the Lebanese farmers market in Beirut, and he asked me to do a project there. And I thought, well, I really would like to do a project about food, of course, but I have no idea how these people think about food, or how they think about my work, because maybe they have other things on mind. So I went there and I gave everybody a list with questions to fill. And my important questions were, what are your memories about food when you were little? And what are your memories about food and war? And I got back all the questions, and I started to talk with people about all the memories of war and of food. And one thing was that everybody was thinking about bread when it came to war, and also bread is still a very important element of Lebanese cuisine. And also what I noticed, that the food memories from when they were little were very common. People from different regions, different political choices, and different beliefs. Most of them had the same childhood memories. So what we did was we made a workshop together with people from very different backgrounds, and we made bowls out of bread. And these bread bowls, we made them green with parsley juice, because parsley is a very important ingredient in Lebanese cuisine. And we presented all these bowls, and I asked people to write their positive memories inside the bowls. And we presented them in the farmers market. And these bowls were all green, and we tried to present the green line. And the green line is a line of demarcation that separated East and West Beirut for many years. So it's a very negative connotation. And so we made this green line, and we invited everybody in the market to eat all the bowls together. And the bowls, of course, they were inscribed with positive childhood memories. So what we did is we wanted to eat away the green line with positive memories and physically share the memories, because we all put the memories inside our bodies. And for me, what was important about this project is that you can see all the bowls have very different shapes. They're very unique. They're very personal. But in the beginning of the day, we made all these different bowls from one and the same dough. And that's also how I regarded all these people. Everybody is very different, but initially we all come from the same dough. We just get out of the oven in a very different way. This is Granny's Toothless candy box. I was imagining to be old without teeth and to have a fake teeth. And I was thinking that it would be very uncomfortable to eat candy. And I would think it would be nice to lie on the couch with your flowery dress on, and then take out your teeth, your fake teeth, and then eat all kind of candies that are easy to eat without teeth. So this is just a collection of candy that is liquid or powder or just easy to eat. This is Christmas dinner. I never want to do Christmas dinners because they're full of cliches, and they're just over-designed already. And then I thought, what is Christmas really about? And if you look aside the whole Christian story, then for me Christmas is just about sharing food and being connected to each other. So this is a very simple intervention of a tablecloth. The tablecloth is not hanging down to the floor, but it's pulling up in the ceiling, and it has slits in it, and this is how you sit in it, and it's really weird to be in there. You can just see your heads, you can't see your bodies and your hands. And I have some reasons for doing this. First of all, physically, you're physically connected to each other. If I pull the curtain, you feel it. But also it's a kind of communist idea about only seeing your face and hiding your clothes. So everybody is equal. So you don't know if you're talking to the mayor or if you're talking to just some kind of neighbor from around the block. Also the food is incorporated in this. This is the nicest part when you go to the toilet and you just see the bags. We did this one in Tokyo, which was really weird because Japanese people have a very different sense of enjoying food, and I was really scared to do it. But once inside the tablecloth, people just transformed into children and started playing. That was really nice. The food is also incorporated in this, so it's a kind of whole performance art thing. And you can see that this lady has a plate, and the plate is cut in two, and the person sitting opposite of her also has a plate like that, but she has melon, and the person opposite of her has ham. Well, ham and melon is such a classical combination that people will start to share immediately. You don't have to tell them what to do. For the main course, one person would get a whole big piece of rib. Another person would get a whole big pumpkin stuffed with seeds and everything in. The next person would get a whole lettuce with dressing and croutons and everything on top. And the last person would only get potatoes. So people would just start to share. It's just a natural thing for people to do. And in Japan, it was really funny because big pieces of meat are generally not given at the table to cut. And only the man got the meat, and they were so happy with it. It was really funny to see. I do give everybody scissors because I don't want to lock people up in my design. So it's just a way to give people the possibility to cut themselves loose again. And this is the last thing I want to show. It's an exhibition about the Second World War in Rotterdam in Holland. Rotterdam has been bombed very hard in the war. People have been in a starvation winter. It has been a very hard time. And this museum had an exhibition about the war and also invited lots of people that actually survived the war. And what I did, I just made little snacks out of original war recipes. So I went to the Resistance Museum and they gave me handwritten recipes. And I made them as little hors d'oeuvres, and I just gave them out like a ration. And what I noticed here, that some people that survived the war didn't taste this food for more than 60 years. And by tasting the food in their mouth, something happened in their brain. They got back memories from that time. And these memories, they were very sad sometimes, or very nice as well, but always very precious to these people because they have forgotten about the memories. And for me, I think this is a luxury in a kind of twisted way, because getting back memories is something that only you own. And I think doing that with food is a very interesting and beautiful thing, I think. So, this is just another slide about the same thing. That's it.
Hi guys, I'm Laurene Leon Boym, and I'm from New York City. I was actually born here, and I'm one half of Boym Partners. We're industrial designers, along with my partner Constantine Boym, and we've been practicing design here for about 20 years in the city. And I definitely wanted to address the issue of luxury a little bit today, because I started thinking a lot, since the recession about new ways of expressing the idea of luxury without making expensive objects. And I think that's kind of a common thread in this symposium. We do a lot of stuff for different companies, but we also, for the past 10 years, have been doing our own editions. And all our editions are made by hand, with love, by real people. And everything is individually cast to order, sold by real people, and the collectors are given opportunities to interconnect and swap stuff and just talk about their collections and all that. Basically, the first project I wanted to show is like the thing that started it all, the Boym editions, and this is a project called Missing Monuments. These are different little buildings, little souvenir buildings, very tiny, all handmade, that are cast out of bonded bronze, and they're all representative of buildings that were either visionary buildings that were either submitted as a competition entry, or were published, or were accepted and almost built, or in the case of some buildings like Imperial Hotel by Frank Lloyd Wright, built and torn down. We've been collecting the typology of miniature buildings for years, just me and my partner, and we thought that other people would like to share our interests. And they put this little picture, similar to this one, in Met Home, like about 10 or 12 years ago, and this thing really took off for us. And these are just a bunch of, first edition. Altogether, there's about 30 of them. Some collectors do have 30 pieces. But, they're a small pleasure. That's what I want to emphasize, this idea of like small-scale pleasure, personal interaction with the designers who made them. Here's another piece from the next series. This is a truncated version. Sorry, I had to do this really quickly, because my slideshow went down right before I was about to come on board today. This is the Pentagon and the World Trade Center from our Buildings of Disaster series, which is the most successful independent design project of all time. Our projects are based on a DIY type style distribution, making distribution model, very much punk rock ethos, and not about any, really, trying to go a little bit into like the handmade nation territory, not about things that people can buy in, big box stores, but things that people can buy, collect, that cost very little, actually. I mean, these buildings, when they came out, they were $90 each. And they're, just really quite substantial. But, people have like emotional relationships to these objects. And I think it's a very important thing to understand that the function is not, of these types of products, souvenirs and miniature buildings, is not, a functional one. It's not about building a better mousetrap. But what it's really about, it's about the emotional issues that surround collecting and people's attachment to objects. We call this fuzzy function. This is another project that is going to be in Design USA at Cooper-Hewitt, and has been around quite a bit. It was in Design in the Elastic Mind. It's a very complicated project because it involves a lot of web film. It's called Babel Blocks. My partner and I actually produced these ourselves in collaboration with a Chinese factory, and we have people hand painting them. And they're not as much handmade, but they're sold in a very nice box for only $50, and everything's handmade and quite elegant. And the whole idea was that we live in the Lower East Side, and we have a lot of different ethnicities down there. And we wanted to express our happiness of being in this community. And we love it very much. So we made these characters, and they became props for films we made that are in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art now. And the films all, were about these like little tiny things, like going to the post office or being on a crowded subway car or on a crowded elevator. And I just wanted to show people how, we coexist here in New York. Anyway, so that project is successful, and it's continuing on, and it's going to be at Design USA at Cooper-Hewitt. Now, I'm going to talk about some newer work that nobody has really seen before, that basically I've been in lockup all summer over. And it started quite a few months ago. This is called the Timeless Collection. Because of the success of all our earlier editions, we decided to actually go more full steam ahead in the past 2 years and really go with a lot more DIY production directly from the studio. We set up a little assembly line with, we trained young people to make these, plus me and Constantine are usually making them alongside them. And what these are is these are objects that I felt were sort of timeless. And sort of impervious to anything. And the idea was to make them look like they were cast in bronze. Like you would take that chair over there and you would, kind of apply this technique and method to it, and it would look like it was popped out of a painting, basically. So these are like the first, production line pieces, and they cost less than $200 each, by the way, in the stores. They're vase bottles encased in each bronze is an actual, recycled bottle, and that kind of harkens back to a lot of the work that we did in the late 80s and early 90s regarding recycling and reusing and recontextualizing ready-mades. The next picture is, it kind of goes all over the place, this selection. This is a lamp from the sitting on one of the tables. I have these wonderful slides by Davies and Starr, who are my favorite photographers ever. And as you can see, these things are just ready-mades. We're like buying very simple things or finding very simple things. But we produce them in limited editions. Everything is hand-signed and numbered. And nothing costs more than, in this line, the prices are between like $75 and like $2,500, Wilma? Yeah, something like that. So that's pretty good. You can buy something handmade by the maker, for less than $100, But it's about this idea of reconnecting with people. It's like, getting on the phone with my collectors, talking to my collectors, listening to their stories, incorporating their ideas in my work. Having community. We have parties at our studio all the time that are really about, us having, a connection. It's like people like the art, artisanal food movement. People were able to this is sort of like artisanal design. It's like people are able to have like a connection to the stuff they're buying. And it's not just about, buying the piece. That's also a creative act, but it's also about the way they use it, the way they install it, and the way they feel about it. Thank you.
I'm Christien Meindertsma, and I'm a product designer. I'm actually not a textile designer, but I love textiles, so I do a lot with them. So that's where the confusion comes from. I graduated about 5 years ago from the Design Academy in Eindhoven with a project that was very much about the value of things that are around us. And I felt that things felt very worthless. And I was wondering why, if I bought something, it felt worthless. And I discovered for myself that it was a lot about not knowing where these things came from, how they were produced and by whom. And so for my graduation, I made a collection of sweaters that were each knit from the wool of one sheep until the sheep was finished. And or the wool of the sheep was finished, not the sheep itself, of course, because you can just shear them and they'll live on. And it included like a little passport with a photograph of the sheep. And I thought it was important for this product to actually not be handmade, but be industrially made, because I think handmade products are always special and valuable, but we're surrounded by industrial products. So I wanted to make something that's and industrial, but also has this story of where it came from. And from there on, I sort of continued with these projects that are connecting the product to the raw materials that they're made of. So in the house opposite, there's rugs knitted from Dutch woolen, Dutch wool. I designed a woolen poof that I've been selling for about 2 years. And this wool actually comes from New Zealand, because this factory makes yarn and it always comes from New Zealand. And now for this project I managed to get Dutch wool. And this might sound really logical to you, but actually most Dutch wool is just thrown away, or farmers think it's very unhandy that the sheep have wool because it costs more to shear them than to sell it. So I'm really happy to now incorporate this Dutch wool into my product so that it doesn't have to be shipped half around the world anymore. And then at one point I thought it's interesting to connect your own products to raw materials, but it might be interesting to swap this. So I decided to follow one raw material all the way into the end product, and I chose a pig. Might sound strange to call this a raw material, but actually it is, because in Holland we have about 16 million pigs, which is about the same amount of people that we have. And you never see them anywhere, only when you're on the highway and there's a truck next to you and the pigs are being transported to the slaughterhouse. That's also the only moment that they actually see the outside world. So I thought this was an interesting starting point to research. And I chose a pig with number 05049. This was his ear. Well, this wasn't his ear tag, but it's a copy of his ear tag, because all animals are tagged and numbered. And I started a research project, not knowing where I'd end up, and it took me about 3 years. And I found 185 different kinds of products that, this one pig ended up in. It's a bit hard to show, but the book is actually divided in 7 chapters, which are based on the body of the pig. So there's skin, bones, meat, internal organs, blood, and fat, and miscellaneous. And I will just read out a few, like very strange things, like the train brakes of the German trains are made from bone ash, and then there's aluminum molds, bullets from this very big American ammunition company who uses the gelatin from the pig to make the bullets, car paints, like the weirdest things you'd never actually think of are made of this pig. And for me, value in things is really about knowing where stuff comes from, but like luxury is also luxury of all these people that are, it's not just the consumer that has luxury, but also all the people that are actually producing it for you. And because we don't know anything about this, it's very difficult to take care of everything that's before the product. So in this case of the pig, these pigs, everybody knows they don't have the best lives, but they actually give us all these raw materials. And and the pig is just an example. Of course, I couldn't have taken a cotton plant or any other kind of raw material. So for me, the value is really in value for everyone that's actually working on our product. So yeah, that's my whole story. It was kind of spontaneous. I hope it was clear.
I have a few questions I'm going to ask, and then we can, if there are questions in the audience, please also raise your hand. But before Christien talked, I was thinking that luxury, at least one of the threads that kind of weaves everyone together is this idea of the handmade, which I think still is part of your work, but except that sort of the industrial. But I was curious, like, if you could talk a little bit more about what makes kind of the industrial sort of something that's of luxury, because it's something that throughout time when we think of luxury, it seems like handmade is always something that is very much a part of luxury.
Well, I think industrial is just like a word that people associate with machines, but there's people working in factories, and there's people part of an industrial process as well. So I would be just as interested in knowing who sewed my jeans in a factory. It might sound industrial, but they're actually sewing it by hand still. So handmade is also much more stretched than. So for me, handmade is super nice, and I make lots of things by hand, but I think the real luxury is in how it's made, not if it's made by hand. It could be made by a machine, but like if it's made in a good way.
Well, it seems too that luxury, at least in some of these definitions, is less tied to money than maybe it used to. I mean, I showed that one sort of image of Damien Hirst's, the most expensive art object ever to be auctioned off. But money, no one sort of mentioned money except for Laurene in the context of, it's fairly inexpensive to purchase something that's handmade. So in terms of what we think of luxury now, how do you, is that true, or do you see money still is it kind of the opposite where it shouldn't cost very much? Is that kind of the part of the new definition or part of the criteria for luxury? And anyone can answer.
Well, I think luxuriety has to do with scarcity. And since the general inhabitor of this world has more money than before, it's less scarce. And I think that's why it used to have to do lots with money, and now it has to do less with money because we have more money, so it's less scarce. So I think it's more about scarcity than money.
Well, it's this idea, though, of when I don't think I need a mic. Do I? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. You do need it.
It's for the recording.
Oh, okay. May I? Thanks. I think it's not so much about I totally agree with Marije about this idea of scarcity, but I think it's more specifically limited editions and things that are customized. Every single, one of the things about, these pieces that are made by hand is every single timeless object we make has a fingerprint on it. It's like you could dust those for fingerprints if we ever get arrested or something like that. And I think this whole idea of having something a little personalized is really part of this idea of luxury, new idea of luxury. It doesn't matter how much it's going to cost, whether it's been produced by hand or whether it's been produced in a factory, but the idea is that there is some element of personalization in it, and that's what makes it luxurious. And the whole idea of spending a lot of money on something just because it's all blinged out is, I think it's a very, unfortunate metaphor for 2 years back. I think we're definitely in a new place right now.
But it's interesting because I think the notion of personalization was actually sort of appropriated by brands who wanted to maintain a certain luxury, right? We had worked for Prada, and their whole thinking was, how do I keep our brand? How do they keep their brand luxurious? Well, it needs to have this personal contact and this. For me, the feeling is more. The thread is that everybody's trying to find the idea, right? There's a level of you have narrative and ideas about the buildings and the objects that makes them attaching. You find narratives about culture, or everybody's trying to, and ideas are cheap, and I think that's the new luxury, is that it's not about the kind of excess of material or scale, but rather the kind of idea narrative that's behind it. Which this is an incredible book, and I think you have to really think about it to come up with, I'm going to trace a pig and see where that pig lands.
I think the nice thing is that actually this kind of luxury is in so many things that surround us. It's just that we don't know it. So it's also simple communication could also create this. So you would actually not have to redesign something, but just communicate.
Right, it's kind of revealing the ordinary or the taken for granted.
Yeah, because there's always an interesting story behind a product. It can be a really ugly story, but it's always interesting.
Well, it's interesting because you make it interesting.
It is interesting.
I know, but I'm saying that's the task that we have.
But designing with concepts is a very open-ended way of working. My partner and I have been using. Yeah, sure, we can swap, or you can tomorrow. Anyway, we've been working with ideas since before ideas were trendy, and I think there's this real interpersonal connection. I mean, in a way, it's a bit of a marketing thing because, you think about it, there is a story, what they called in the old parlance, a story attached to the object, like to your book, that people are really going to get into. And it's true, it's cheap, it's free, but basically it's hard to get ideas, and ideas are scarce. So then we go back to the whole idea of luxury and scarcity and that whole loop.
And also, I was thinking about the idea of time. I mean, you mentioned it. I feel like that, to me, is, if I had to pick one most luxurious concept, it's time. It's having the time to actually come up with ideas and time to think, quiet time, in order to kind of create. And that's, I think, for me, when I go around and look at some of these exhibits and look at your work, I mean, I don't know how much time you all have. I know it's, as you've gotten to be more known, your probably time is very, very rare. So, but I think that for me is one of the most luxurious items. And how does that fit into, what you do and how you work?
I was just thinking as well because, sometimes in our studio, like, we get all our ideas outside of the studio. It's not about something. We don't sit at our desks and think, okay, what are we going to do today? What's a new idea? What we do is we go out in the world and we experience life. And, I'm in a pool or, I'm in a yoga class, and I know I'm not supposed to be thinking about design when I'm in a yoga class, but I think about design pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, my whole entire life. So, I'm thinking about stuff, and then all of a sudden I get this idea, right? And, the time we spend in the studio is the time we spend developing product development, fabrication, whatever, or, dealing with journalists and clients and, all that other stuff. It's the business side. But the idea is, they're kind of coming from a different place,
So maybe luxury is something which is ephemeral, something that you can't make into a thing, like time or youth or seeing your children grow up, or things that you can't grasp.
I can only agree. Time.
Well, I had one question sort of pre-planned, and I don't know, maybe this is you're gonna kind of groan when I ask it, but do you think designers are luxuries? I mean, do you think you are a luxury to? Because I know that I'm married to an architect, and architecture is, it's right now it's not such a good profession to be in. Although some are doing well, and I know Work AC is doing well, but in terms of I don't know, it's like he always refers to himself as, people don't need architects, they're getting builders and all that. So are designers a luxury?
Well, of course we don't think so. I mean, well, it's a luxury to be a designer or an architect because we're doing something that we love, and I think that many people don't have that luxury. But I think that we are trained to imagine other ways of living or making or doing or making a lot with a little, and I think that can, if you want to be very pragmatic about it, I think that can save a lot of money or open up doors in a sort of conversation. So for a client, I think if they're looking for a service, they can go to a builder. If they're looking for a kind of interrelationship, and we talked a lot about this notion of relationship, where you as an architect read them and they read you, and you enter into this interesting conversation. I think that's a luxury, but not in the sense of a financial luxury, but a kind of pleasure of exchange.
Oh, now I forgot what I was going to say. No. I think the real issue comes back to this idea about ideas and stories. People, the necessity is not for design itself, but it's for the relationships it creates and the narratives that it creates. And people need stories. People just need stories. They need objects to construct their identity. They need buildings to live in. You know, they need clothes to wear. I mean, is design a luxury? I don't think so.
Well, I think it is very much a luxury in many many products. If you just look around you in the store, like all design that's just shells. Like for instance, if you want to buy a phone and it breaks in a month, you won't be able to find the same phone because they already produced 100 new ones in one brand. And in that sense, I think it's it's like weird luxury because it's not even actually luxurious. But so in that sense, I think if design is really a shell, like just like something that makes something look better, then it might be over luxurious. And it might be interesting if it...
Or its weight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking lately about the old-fashioned design of making new outer shells, how you would call it, is a bit like plastic surgery. Like a surgeon is trained to heal people that are sick, and but then a plastic surgeon just uses this ability to make something look more sexy, just makes big tits, maybe. And I think that a lot of designers might be on that edge. You know, you become a designer because you are trained to have original and good ideas that can help the world to be a nicer place, but you can also have designers that just make bigger tits. So I guess luxury, I mean, not every designer is the same designer.
I think the design field is too broad to actually answer the question correctly, because there's so many different kinds of design and industrial design.
But I would say that the part that's not a luxury is our ability to rethink program. You know, to rethink something's use, or to take a position, so you're not just making something that is already taken for granted more beautiful and consumable, but you sort of shift that.
One of the things that when I was on your website, Marije, there was, the more I sort of see more of your work, the less maybe this is so, but this idea of kind of people going back to nature, I mean, sort of starting kind of working more with their hands. I mean, that's with your work too, Christien, and also with Lauren's. That has, I think, become very, much kind of associated with luxury. And in some ways, it seems contradictory. Sort of this idea of kind of simplicity, or just kind of the very sort of basic notion of, as you're talking about relationships. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the, I guess, some of your ideas of this sort of kind of a more simple life, or if that's even kind of something that is necessarily a part of your work?
Yeah, I don't know if going back to a more simple life, like going back to things how they were used to be, I don't think that's the solution for things, because I think we can't go back, and I think we really don't want to go back, really, honestly. But I do think that having what we have right now and look at it in a new way, I think that is what can open your eyes to either change your habits or get more positive feelings out of the things that surround you. So I don't know if going back to simplicity is really what we want. I do think that changing your vision of the world is the solution, maybe. It's a bit of a vague answer, sorry.
Well, I think that it's actually the world is really complex. So in that sense, going back to simplicity, not making it more simple, but making it more transparent, might be like a ideal, at least in my work, to sort of try to make things more understandable that are around us because we know so little about them. But no, not simple as in going back, because that would,
I think we could replace, though, the word simplicity with nostalgia in some cases. I mean, I'm not, musing about pre-industrial revolution, craftsmen sort of arrangements. But what I'm talking about more is like this, idea that more like a more political evolved idea that everybody's participating in the design. It's not just, it's art for the people. It's not just for the elitist. And that's actually why it's a new luxury for people to have small objects that give them pleasure. I mean, the handbag craze, which is really awful, was sort of like, a big thing for a lot of people because it gave them a chance to have what they perceived as luxury or what the media told them was luxury. But I think now, because we're living in much simpler times than we were before, there's this whole ability to sort of like, for people to reconnect with very small, very precious objects. But it's not like bad nostalgia. It's like just, kind of rethinking our values.
Do you all have questions for one another? I didn't give you the time to ask before I open it up to all of you out there. Anyone?
Well, maybe to the designers, because there's an interesting phenomena here, I think, in the U.S. Where it's sort of amateur design, craft is you have magazines like Make. You can learn how to make your own MP3. So rather than spending a lot on Apple, you can, put your MP3 in your scarf, and it resonates with this idea of, the notion that just understanding how things are put together is an amazing sort of opening up. And I'm wondering, as designers, open source and all these, how do you feel about that? And if you're sort of part of that?
I think that's really lovely, because that's all a part of making the world more understandable, and also the objects that surround us more understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And also for me, because I work with food, I'm a bit on the edge of the culinary world and design world. And in the culinary world, you can also see that recipes are free and people can just make them. But if you make a tomato sauce and if you make a tomato sauce, it's just different. And I think that's just making richness in things. You will never get the same chair as if you would buy one with IKEA. When people just make them themselves.
I think it's like really in the details. I mean, whatever, everybody has an interpretation and, ideas are out there in the air, but basically, there's different levels of like how deep you just want to get into the object. I mean, I feel like it's the open source, of course, is a great thing. And, we've used the internet a lot to put up pirate videos and stuff like that we shot in our studio of the Babel Blocks. And we have tons of different, fan groups all over the internet. And it's actually been like a really good ally for us. At the same time, I don't think it really affects the design directly, because it's just the experience that Constantine and I bring to it and the people that we work with bring to it. You can't replicate it. You just can't.
Are there any questions in the audience for any of the panelists this morning? About work or about your ideas of luxury or anything? Yes.
I think, first of all, design in general is not luxury. I think it's a necessity. I think designers are the modern-day philosophers. If not for designers, then I don't think this world would go anywhere. And the progression of science, if that would be going hand in hand more with design, I think that would be a good future for all of us. That could solve a lot of problems. The fact that these people use their brains to come up with fresh ideas, look at a fresh way to old things, like a cup. Give a new look to a cup, that's an important thing. So I think, personally, design is not a luxury. It can be a luxury because it produces beautiful things. So for me, that's luxury. That's in the eye of the beholder. So luxury is many things to many people. But for me, design itself, the concept of design, product design, architecture, all of that, is that those people are the future of the world, together with science. I don't think there's any other way. So for me, it's the philosophers of the new world.
Thank you.
I would like to know that's not a question, it's a statement.
Right.
What do you think about that concept?
You know, the thing is, I mean, I actually want to talk a little bit about this, Wilma, because you're making me think a little bit about this. Basically, before, like I would say probably in the past 10 years, a strange paradigm shift has happened in the design profession. And it's taken on more of the role that used to be reserved for literature or for, film directors or for people making, a pop masterpiece like Pet Sounds or something like that. Now designers have the ability to actually insert narrative and become philosophers, as you said, into their products. Because, I'm sorry, I can't design a better chair than that one. And I know I can't. And to pretend I can, I think it's really, false. I think design is better for, this moment now because people are really, honest about objects for a change, and they're really expressing the ideas they have in their heads and the ideas and the narratives they want to share with their audiences. And, it's like, I think a lot of things have just opened up, which has been amazing, especially in the past 5 years.
When you say open up, I'm inferring from that it's, as you were mentioning about design and science, but I think in many ways the categories in design have been blurred. I think there's so many, I think when we think of design, I think of our own triennial at the Cooper-Hewitt, how inclusive it is in terms of the types of design that we now include. So I think with that kind of, with food design, all of this, it's a much more kind of inclusive and therefore, I don't know. I think it makes a huge difference in terms of how design is ultimately then sort of seen in the world.
Well, I think what's really opened up and been very interesting for our studio has been this whole, revolution of like China and the factories. 10 years ago, you couldn't really get into them unless you had like a middle person or unless you're working through a manufacturer. Now people can just go on the internet, find a manufacturer like on the other side of the world, and organize, a product development cycle, including prototypes and the whole, shebang. And in a way, that's like really freeing people up who are not, it's like desktop publishing when it happened, or DV or something like that. It's like opening up product design to a lot of different people who normally wouldn't have been doing it, or opening up design to people, in the everyday, as opposed to just in the people who are trained to do it. And I think that's really quite an amazing thing that's happening right now. And, it's exciting.
Yes.
Do you think that's for the good? That everyone can sort of interfere into design?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we have to see, and we should not be afraid, and we should experiment, because it is a way. We believe that design is important, but how do you convince others that it is? And the only way to do that is through a kind of education and sharing, and the kind of open source is a way to educate. The Netherlands have an amazing history of being educated in design, and they've, politically, they've embraced it as a strength for the country. And if you look at the US, the first thing to get cut when anything goes wrong is money for the arts, because there is the sense that it's completely luxurious and we don't need it, because, whereas, of course, art could serve on so many levels. And so I think the kind of risk of opening up and commercializing in a way, or making it, everybody has an opinion and all the blogs, and is also a way to start a conversation which can then disseminate a level of education for people to embrace design and architecture and not feel like it's an elite field. So
maybe if I ask everybody personally, what is the goal of their designs? What do they want to achieve with it? Because it's about like the goal. It's constantly kind of focusing on the design, the designer and the design thing. But what's further on down the road? What happens after that design goes into the world? What do you want? What are you projecting? Are people going to be more happy, or are they going to have more time to waste? Or so maybe everybody, because you cannot talk about design, but you can talk about your personal, let's say, vision for mankind. Can I say?
Well, I mean, we may fail or succeed, but we really try to make a difference. We try to find the, whatever we can to sort of take a position and see how things can change in use, or people discovering, something ordinary in a new way and make them think about the world in a different way. I mean, we try to do that.
Okay, that's still. I know it's hard. I know it's a silly question, but you want them to think different about what's wrong and what needs to be right.
I think maybe I have an answer, because I realized in the last week that because my book won a prize, and I was thinking about how nice that was and why it was, and then I thought I have this dream, and felt like really sort of 70s kind of a thing. But I really dreamed that when I would be 80 or old, that it would actually be normal for us to sort of understand the things that are around us, and that also everybody who collaborated on these things or were part of this production, so animals, people, the country, the land, everywhere in the world, that all of this is sort of transparent and treated in a good way, because actually the world is super big, but it's also really small. So I'm really hoping that this will change. So yeah. So.
For me personally, I think when I do my work, I'm trying to make a bridge between food and design. I want to make people more aware of what they eat. And by making the choices for the kind of food they eat daily, mostly 3 times a day, they decide how the world around us looks. And so that's one thing that I think is important about sharing with people and making them more aware of. And also making people more aware of what the food does to their body. And I also really want to make people more positive about food and treating it more with more respect, because and that's also a bit linked to your story. When people know that this cheap chicken that they buy in the supermarket, how it has been treated, it gives them more respect for food. And and so it's more like, it's for me personally, it's more like it's a discovery of food food can be as a material for design. So sometimes it can be about psychology, sometimes it can be about culture or society aspects. So it's my personal search, and then from this personal search I can inspire people to think about it in a different way.
Can I ask something? Do you reach really also the people that you want to reach with your book or with your projects? Because I think in a lot of cases, for instance, the book, you have to have it and to read it, but I wonder if this book is only read by a small community of people that are already
Actually, I can tell you that just to sort of give you an idea, for this kind of book, if you print about 1,000, then that's already really a lot when you sell them all. And I've sold about 6,000 copies of it. And the interesting thing is that it goes to like people who are really interested in the environment, but it's also given away as a company gift by the biggest. Actually, it's a company that has a monopoly position in this whole animal industry. they give it away as a company gift. And you might think of that as a negative thing, but I think it's like a really great thing, because it's like, I see my book a bit like a horse of Troy. And it's nice because it has a really big... I didn't expect, of course, when I made it, I thought it would be a much smaller group, but it's nice to see that there is... I don't think it's actually in my book, but it's in the world, that there is a space for this kind of knowledge, and people are interested in it.
Because I can imagine that there are, in your case, for instance, more effective ways to reach the goal, to go and work in the factory where they produce the meat and do something with the packaging, because that reaches a lot of people. If you could do something more like...
My book is not only about the meat, it's about showing the... It's actually not about meat. I mean, if I could have left the meat out, I would have. It's about all these byproducts and like the not being transparent of the world. And in Holland, there's quite some groups who are like animal rights activists, and they're even in the government. But I've been there for a while, and these animals are still stuck. So, of course, there might be better ways than what I'm doing. But yeah, you know, it's just another way of looking at it.
Yeah. I think it's nice from the book of Christien that she entered the world which is not visible for many people. And by making this book, we can enter this world and have a view into it. And I think a lot of designers can go into different fields where normally we don't know about, like, for example, archaeological resources are written in books, and only if you're really interested, you know what they are doing. But I think a designer, and especially...
That's actually a good question, what this woman said about designers being philosophers. If I, for instance, because I had to sort of go into this whole sort of cooperative world, if I would have been a journalist, they would have never told me all this information. It's like being a designer making art. People sort of trust you and they tell you all these stories. So it's also sort of a tool to find out things that you would otherwise, because we think with Wikipedia and like the internet that we can find everything, but it's really not true. Like, it's only things that people want to be found.
And now also, like, we know a lot about the pig, but before only the farmers knew.
Farmers don't actually. No. The funny thing is the farmers have no idea where their pig ends up in. Actually, all these people, there might be 100 steps between this start point and the end point, and all the people in between don't know where they are in this whole phase. So that's actually really strange.
Have you ever thought about making this an educational project? Maybe starting in Holland? And I want to rectify something about the 16 million pigs. There are 14 million pigs in Holland.
Really?
14 million pigs, yes.
Doubled. Well, actually, yeah, maybe. I actually made an exhibition about this book in the Kunsthal in Rotterdam, where I packaged all the real product, because in the book I photographed all the products 1-to-1, so on a real scale. But in the Kunsthal I created a shop. It's not like you couldn't buy anything, but it looked like a supermarket, and all the objects were packaged. So it was like an ear lying next to a bullet, and the nice thing was that every week I had to change the meat, because it of course have to be fresh. And then I could sort of hear what people were saying without them knowing that I made the thing. And especially children, they really understood it, and they were not like appalled by all this meat or a hoof, or they just thought it was really interesting. And that was nice, because I didn't make it for children, but it was nice to see that they actually understood what it was about. So maybe I will. Oh, actually, I have a better question to this. I'm working on a series of coloring books, which each show one farm. Because if you're a child and you Google like farm coloring page, you always find this 1950s image of one laughing horse and a laughing cow, and like one farmer, and that's really not what farming is about. So I'm trying to make a realistic image of where our food comes from now.
I'm actually came in a little bit late, but I'm also part of the exhibition about food and work. And And we did a workshop about pigs and food production with students at the Delft University of Technology, where we had master students in architecture working on food production and specifically pigs. And we visited a slaughterhouse, we designed pig stables with architecture students. And it was really interesting because it's something what architects don't ever do. They have no clue about it, and it was really eye-opening in a way. We learned a lot, and they learned a lot, and I think they look at food a very different way as well. So that was sort of an educational project about this same topic. So a piece of that movie is also here, and the students were designing pig stables.
Any other questions? You can also continue this afterwards, but thank you all very much for coming. And, great presentations and great questions. So thank you very much for coming tonight, or this morning.